not just loud or soft. It's not just pleasing or not pleasing. It actually is an energy. And that energy, when it's at a certain frequency, it literally has the power to shatter a glass feet away. In the same way, these mantras that we chant, the Vedic mantras, that's why in the yagna, in the arti ceremony, if you understand them, if you know them, wonderful. If you don't worry. But keep the heart open. Keep that inner ear open, because actually merely allowing the sound into you is enough to transform you, is enough to change you. Come on in. And so as we listen to the mantras and we really open ourselves to them, it's opening ourselves to that power of transformation. And so thank you for the beautiful, beautiful mantras this evening. We'll begin as usual with a question that's come in advance. We get questions that come in advance, and then we'll open it up to any question that anyone here has. And there's no rules. There's no such thing as a stupid question or silly question. The only rule is it has to be a question that really matters to you. Because satsang is our opportunity. The word literally means in the presence of truth. But it's in the presence of a truth that has the ability to transform us if we let it. It's not about me sitting up here lecturing and you sitting down there listening. It's about together a space that is created through the grace. And here so powerfully through the grace of Mother Ganga, through the grace of being somewhere where for thousands of years the sages and the saints and the rishis came to attain enlightenment. Now you can come here and you can eat pizza and you can go to a cyber cafe and you can get a cappuccino and you can do all sorts of things here. But this is very, very recent. But this place has been drawing people for thousands of years, long before you could get a piece of pizza. Long before you could get a cappuccino or go shopping or check your email. There's a power that's here. That's an invitation to us to dive into it. And so any question is fine, from the most personal to the most general. From the smallest tiny thing to the biggest, broadest thing. The only thing that matters is that it matters to you. So with that, I'll begin with one of the questions that's come in advance and then open it to any questions that anyone here has. I was able to remove the negative influences from my life, including my alcohol addiction, my depression, and my anxiety after years of fighting against it. Now I'm feeling in some way free and happy, but also lost and empty. I'm not any longer sure what to do with my life. How can I find my purpose and direction? So this is a really interesting and very common situation. We have something in our lives, and for this person it was depression and drugs and alcohol, and for all of us it may be something different. But we have something in our lives that we know we need to be free of. Maybe some pain, some grudge that we're holding on to that's identifying us. Something that's happened in our lives that we just won't let go. Maybe it is some addiction. Drugs, alcohol, food, gambling, sex, Facebook, whatever it may be. It is. It's not so much an addiction to Facebook itself, but it's an addiction to distraction, which is actually a very, very deep and profound addiction that so many people have. Many struggle with depression, many struggle with anxiety. But here's what's interesting. We know we need to be free of it because we know it's causing us to suffer. We know that it's keeping us from living as the truth of who we are. And yet, there are these two sides of dilemma. Side number one, I know that I should give it up, but I find that I can't. Which after some time you realize is because on a deep level, I guess I don't want to. When you try to give something up enough times and you can't, at some point you have to really get honest and say, why don't I want to? What is it in me that is struggling against the part of me that is trying to free myself of this suffering? Because clearly there's a tug of war inside. So if I'm trying to free myself of drugs, of alcohol, of depression, of anxiety, of grudges, of pain, of whatever it may be, and I try and I try and I try and nothing seems to work, it's important to realize there's parts of me that are fighting against myself. There's parts of me that are actually holding on to that. And then the other aspect of this tragic irony is what the question raises, which is, by God's grace, I finally get free of them. And now I feel lost. Now I don't know who I am. And a lot of that is because we identify falsely with all of this ignorance. We identify as the victims of what has happened to us. So we identify as the addict, as the alcoholic, or as the child of the alcoholic. We identify as the one who was abused. We identify as the one who abused. We identify as I'm depressed, I'm anxious, I have anger issues. We make all of that who we are. And so when it comes to letting it go, the dilemma becomes, well, then who will I be? And that's very scary. And it's what it makes so many people hold on to that, which is not self, because we don't know who is self. So we hold on to the false because at least it's something. And this is where it's so important to actually know who you are. This is where we dive and delve in a meditative spiritual path to experience who we are. Because you're not the addict. You're not the alcoholic. Doesn't mean that you don't spend your time unskillfully in ways that are not accepting the beautiful invitation the universe has given you to wake up. Okay. Doesn't mean that you're not engaging in behaviors that are working against your awakening. Okay. But it's not who you are. It's just what you're choosing to do, how you're choosing to spend time, the choices you're making at this particular intersection of time and space. It's not who you are. Because there was a you long before you were an addict. There was a you long before you were depressed. There was a you long before any of the drama you're currently telling yourself existed. And there's a you in the moments that we experience freedom, regardless of few and far between they may seem to be. Even for a moment, a moment in meditation, a moment in yoga class, a moment in ecstatic chanting, a moment in love, a moment in service, a moment lying down and looking at the stars, whatever it may be. There's a moment that even those of us in the throes of addiction, nonetheless, you experience it. Throes of depression, throes of anxiety, throes of misery. Nonetheless, there are these periodic moments of your true self saying, I'm still here. I'm still here. The universe saying, I'm still here. I'm still here. Haven't forgotten about you. Come back. Come back. And so in those moments, when you're not using, not engaged in the addiction, not depressed, not anxious, not distracting yourself, not in the grudge, not in that false identity, well, you're still there. Which means all of those things are not who you are. And this is what a spiritual practice gives us, is the opportunity to actually experience who we are. It's like my favorite story of this temple in, I think it was Cambodia. I can never remember. It was either Cambodia or Thailand, where for years and years, hundreds of years, they had been worshiping this clay Buddha. And one day the monks in the temple of the clay Buddha are cleaning the Buddha. And suddenly something starts to shine from within it. They think that's weird, and so they start to clean it a little more, and something shines from inside it. The more they clean, the more it's shining. And they realize that there's this crack in the clay and it's shining from within. And so they slowly, because it's their Buddha, but very slowly, very carefully, start to see what's in that crack. And they realize it's gold. And so slowly, they remove the clay and uncover this golden Buddha. And they then found out, the story is that when the invaders had come and were looting and destroying all of the gold, the monks in the temple of the golden Buddha were afraid it was going to be destroyed and melted down, and so they covered it with clay to protect it. And the good news was the Buddha survived. The bad news was the monks didn't. So nobody knew that actually in this clay Buddha was a gold Buddha. And what I love about that story is it's such a beautiful metaphor for our lives. Because we live as clay, searching for gold. Whether I'm going to get it by the money that I make, I'm going to get it by the fame that I get, I'm going to get it by how physically beautiful I can make my body or my house or my car. Whether by how popular I can be. Or even, sadly, we do it on the spiritual path. I'm going to do it through getting this certificate and that certificate, and I'll do this and I'll do this. And it's wonderful. Get them, by all means. Learn as much as you can learn. But don't think you need it to become gold. It's not about finding that gold from somewhere outside that you're going to just dump on top of the clay, which is already dumped on top of the gold that you are. The path is a path of letting go of the clay. And so when we embark on a spiritual path, we do that. We realize, what's my clay? Because our question then, of course, becomes, rather than where do I find gold? Where do I become worthy? Rather than that, it becomes, what's my clay? What is it that's blocking me from living as the truth of who I am? And our path becomes then about letting go of the clay. But as that happens, there's this very interesting sort of no man's land experience where the clay is washed off mostly. So, okay, my addictions, I've gotten free of that. I'm free of the depression. I'm free of these bad habits. I'm free of that. but I haven't yet fully turned my vision inward to see the gold. So I'm still looking out, and I'm used to seeing clay, and now I don't see clay anymore because I've washed it off. But I haven't yet learned to turn my vision inward and see gold. And so I look out and I see nothing. And I feel like, oh my God, who am I? What am I going to do? What am I going to think about? What are my values? And we start to try to recreate an identity. When really all you have to do is turn the focus in and realize the gold. And there's nothing wrong, by the way, with an identity, but try to make it as true as possible. Try to make it as much in alignment with the truth of who you are. So who you are is spirit, soul, consciousness, love, truth. All of that you are when you can quiet that which you're not. And it seems for that brief moment like, oh my God, there's nothing, who am I? But if you allow yourself to sit there long enough, if you allow yourself to sit there in that space, what you find is actually that beautiful experience of the self. Here we'll do a little exercise. So there's this camera that's kind of in the middle of the room. We'll call it the middle of the room. If you are on this side of the camera, raise your hand. Great. You guys are group 1. If you're group 1, raise your hand. Good. On this side of the camera, you're group 2. Raise your hand if you're group 2. Wonderful. Okay. Group 1, your job is you're going to chant Om. Okay? So on the count of 3, we're going to practice. Only group 1, not group 2. Group 1, count of 3, you're going to chant Om. 1, 2, 3, go. Wonderful. Stop. Group 2, you are going to make as much noise as you possibly can. Now, I know we're in satsang. I know it's supposed to be a very quiet, peaceful time, but I really mean what I say. I don't mean noise like, not that. Really, as much noise as you can, as much ruckus as you possibly can, but stay in one place. Use your mouths, use your hands, as much ruckus as you possibly can on the count of 3 until I raise my hand. When I do, you'll stop. 1, 2, 3, go. First try, great. Usually you have to really make people understand, no, I really mean ruckus. Okay. Now, on the count of 3, both groups are going to go together. And then when I raise my hand on your side, it means your side becomes quiet. Okay? And the other side, of course, keeps going. So count of 3, everybody together until my hand is on your side, at which point your side becomes quiet. 1, 2, 3, go. Great. Now, Om chanters. Did you start only when the ruckus stopped, or you were going the whole time? You sure? Couldn't hear anything. Anybody hear that? I love this demonstration because in 2 minutes, it clarifies the problem and the solution of so much of what is wrong in our lives. This is what we're looking for. Whether you call it Om, whether you call it peace, whether you call it joy, whether you call it light or gold or connection or awakening, whatever you call it, this is what we are looking for as our internal experience, right? Who wouldn't want that to be the sound of their mind all the time? This is what most of our experience feels like. What most of us then try to do, living in this experience, is go out and find ourselves some Om. So we're going to go out and we're going to search for peace, we're going to search for joy, we're going to search for spiritual connection. But we haven't done anything about this ruckus. And what this demonstration makes so clear is you can have all the Om you want. But until this becomes quiet, you can't hear it. And once this becomes quiet, miraculously, you no longer have to go out and search anywhere because it's already there. And so whether we are talking about quieting our minds or aspects of our identity, this is what most of our felt sense experience in life is. When we slowly quiet it, free from the screaming of the addiction, free from the screaming of the depression, free from the screaming of the anxiety, free from the screaming of the grudge, the pain, whatever it is, we're freeing ourselves of it. There's that moment before we are able to turn inward and actually hear this Om. Our eardrums have also become accustomed to this volume, and it takes a moment, a metaphoric moment, for us to literally recalibrate inside to this new normal. And yeah, for a while it seems empty, boring, lost. Who am I? Where's my noise? Where's my ruckus? What am I supposed to think about? Like there was always something going on. Now there's nothing going on. But if we allow ourselves to just stay with it for a few breaths, suddenly our ears become more accustomed. It's like when you walk into the dark after you've been in the light. It takes the eyes a few moments to adjust. First it's pitch black, you can't see anything. Then suddenly in 30 seconds, a minute, you find you can actually see almost everything. Same way. Our inner calibration adjusts. And then we realize, oh my God, how did I ever live with this ruckus? But you have to take that leap of faith, knowing I'm going to clear this out of my life because I know this exists. For a lot of people, the fear is, well, yeah, I know this is hell, but if I get rid of it, who am I going to be? What am I going to think about? What am I going to do? What will my identity be? And so the leap of faith is, beneath this is this. And if I can quiet this, if I can free myself of this, if I can free myself of that false identification, I'll actually experience the truth of who I am. And that's what we're here for. So in that moment, allow yourself. Don't worry if you don't know who you are. Knowing who you're not is actually what's most important. You know, one of the metaphors that we use is this peeling of an onion. So you peel layers. It's a beautiful meditation practice called neti neti, not this, not that. So we peel layers. I'm not my clothes. I'm not my skin. I'm not my blood. I'm not my bones. I'm not my organs. I'm not my thoughts. I'm not my emotions. I'm not my history. I'm not my identity. I'm not my ego. We peel these layers back one by one of what I'm not. And then you get to that beautiful space when the layers of the onion have all been peeled back. And there's nothing left to say. I am not that. And then there's that beautiful experience of just isness. And there may not be a name for it. There may not be a label for it. It may not fit into a box. Yet, that experience does tend to inspire poetry and whatnot. So eventually, don't worry, you'll find some way of sharing it. But it doesn't fit into a box. Doesn't lend itself to a semantic identity. But it's an experience. But you've got to have the courage to allow yourself to sit there. To be in an experience of just isness. Who am I if I'm not my age, my job, my religion, my relationships? Think about all the things you use to identify yourself. What you do, what you look like, where you're from, whose kid you are, whose parent you are, whose spouse you are, what you're good at, all the things that we use to identify ourselves. And then realize that you aren't any of those things. You just are. Period. And it takes a bit of courage to just sit with that. Because the ego needs an identity, it needs a name, it needs something to grab onto. But if you can just sit in that isness, without grasping, without trying to name, it expands and it expands and expands and expands, and it goes from feeling like nothingness to feeling like everythingness. But you have to have the courage to just sit there internally. So we have time for only one question here, if there are any. Yes.
Probably a follow-up question.
Sure.
How do you get the courage?
I'm sorry?
How do you get the courage?
How do you get the courage? Because you realize that's what matters most in life. I told a story last night, but it's worth repeating, of a student, a disciple with a guru, who says to the guru one day, he says, I've been meditating, praying. I want to experience God, but my mind just keeps wandering and wandering. And the guru takes him to the river, takes him into the river, holds his head under the water. First, the guy thinks it's a blessing. Water is sacred, right? In all our religions, I'm being blessed. Then he thinks, oh my God, I'm being drowned. And the guru keeps holding the head underwater until literally the guy can't breathe. And he's thrashing around and he literally thinks he's going to drown and die. And finally, at the very last minute before he collapses, the guru pulls him up out of the water. And he comes up. He can't breathe. And the guru says to him, so what were you thinking about down there? And the guy says, thinking about I was going to die. What do you mean thinking about? I was suffocating. And the guru said, did your mind wander? And the man says, of course my mind didn't wander. All I was thinking about was air and life and breathing. And the guru says, when you want God as much as you wanted air, your mind will stop wandering. And I tell this story again because it explains much better than I could without the story. Where that courage comes from, where the discipline comes from. Because it's not only a matter of courage, it's also a matter of discipline. There's so much in our lives these days that's pulling us in every direction. I mean, does anyone actually go to sleep at night feeling like, oh, thank God I did everything I needed to do today? How much gets left undone? And that's only like the essentials. Forget all the things I would really like to do if I had time. There's so much pulling us that if you don't make time and make discipline for something, and you just sort of think, well, there will be time, it'll never happen. And so the courage and then the action that comes out of that courage comes from realizing I want this more than I want anything else. If my highest goal in life is to make money, I'm going to jump out of bed every day and rush to the office or get on the stock market or whatever my way of making money is going to be. I'm going to jump out of bed and I'm going to do that because that's my highest goal. And I'm going to stay with those stocks or stay at the office or keep doing whatever I'm doing to make money until my body collapses in the night and I have to go to sleep because that's my priority. If my priority is to get the most number of followers on Facebook that I possibly can imagine, well, I'm going to get out of bed thinking about how can I find more Facebook followers. And I'm going to do that until late at night. Whatever my highest priority is, that's going to pull me out of bed in the morning. It's going to dictate how I live. It's going to dictate the choices I make. So if someone on the street says to me, a beggar on the street says, can you give me some money? If my highest goal is to have as much money as I can, the answer is no, because what I give you is pulled away from me. But if my highest goal is to be a giving and compassionate person, then even if I don't have much, I'm going to give because giving is in line with my highest goal. So it's all about what do we want more than we want anything else? And if what I want more than I want anything else is that awareness of who I am, that truth, because that is why we are here, then I'm going to leap with courage. Because I realize I don't have a choice. To not leap would not be in alignment with my truth. Right? I mean, people do things for love all the time that otherwise you would say, well, that's crazy. How do you explain it? Well, it was for love. Okay, we get it. If love of that person is the highest thing in your life, well then, yeah, you do all kinds of things. You take leaps. If your highest goal is connection with God, truth of the self, enlightenment, awakening, you're going to leap. And then you're going to follow up that leap with choices and decisions. And it's not easy. Because we live in a world that is literally pulling us in every direction, that is saying, make money, get richer, get thinner, look younger, And wherever you go, anti-aging this, as though somehow age were the enemy. Here in India, we bow down and touch the feet of our elders. Age is wisdom. Age is respect. Age is reverence. The traditional elders of not just India, but of any indigenous culture of the world, try to sell any of them an anti-aging cream. Try to even get them to use it for free. I mean, could you imagine? Could you imagine going to revered elders of any spiritual tradition, saying, guess what? You know those wrinkles on your face? I've got the thing for you. They'd look at you like you were nuts. And then they'd put you in their lap. And because clearly the problem was yours, not their wrinkles. But the point is that we live in such a crazy world that unless we are fully conscious all the time, it's going to fill our minds with crazy priorities. What's most important to you? Looking young. What's most important? Getting rich. What's most important? Being famous, being popular. We get so brainwashed, so indoctrinated. And so that courage comes from really taking back our lives and saying, hey, wait, I know my priority. My priority is truth. My priority is knowing myself. My priority is being of service. As Pujya Swamiji always says, ask not what for me, but what through me. Life is not about what for me. Life is about what through me. But we are indoctrinated so much, especially in the West, to keep asking, what for me, what for me? I remember being on a plane with Pujya Swamiji 20-something years ago. The first time I was in America with him, and the airlines have magazines in the seat pockets of the seat in front of you, just the airline magazine, and he was flipping through it, and there was some advertisement for an assertiveness training workshop. And he laughed and he said to me, this is the problem with America. He said, you people think that the key to life is assertiveness. And of course, on the ad in a big bubble, it had said, what for you? With a question mark. Like, learn how to get what for you. He said, the problem with America is you think the key to life is what for me. He said, you don't need assertiveness training. You need adaptiveness training. He said, we need to learn to ask what through me. Because there's this divine will, there's a flow of the universe that's not according to our direction. And our success in life on every level except the most superficial is based on how we align ourselves with the flow of the universe. Are you rowing your boat upstream? Or are you rowing it downstream? How in alignment are you with the will of the divine, with the flow of grace? And so that courage comes from realizing this is more important to me than everything that I'm currently spending my time and energy on. And lastly, it's more important to me than the comfort that I get in the familiarity of who I think I am. Because when we hold on to something, you have to realize if you're holding on to it, it's serving you. And so I hold on to my fear, I hold on to my pain, I hold on to my grudges, I hold on to my false identity because it is serving me in some way. That may sound crazy. We think, oh, but it's just hurting me. Well, maybe the way it's serving is it gives you a wonderful excuse for why you haven't actually stepped up to the plate of your life. Maybe it gives you a wonderful excuse for being a drug addict or for being an alcoholic. Maybe it gives you a wonderful excuse for not being able to be of service in your life, for only being able to focus on taking care of myself. Right? I mean, we all know those people who it's like sort of their whole life is just all I've got to take care of myself. So all of that which we hold on to, it's serving us in some way. And that courage is to say, I understand this is going to be uncomfortable for a little while. I'm prepared to jump out of my comfort zone. Because a golden cage is a cage nonetheless. A diamond cage is a cage nonetheless. And as beautiful as I've decorated this cage that I'm in, as safe and familiar as it feels, it's a cage. And the point of life is not to decorate our cages, but to get free. And so you take the leap. I'll end with just sharing another one of my very favorite short parables about this, of a man who was holding on to a rope for dear life. Suddenly, an angel's voice comes and says, "Let go." And the man says, "I can't let go. Oh my God, are you the angel of death? You know, if I let go, I'm going to plummet to my death." And the angel says, "No, I'm not the angel of death, but just, if you can't let go with all 10 fingers, let go with one." So he thinks, all right, her voice is so sweet and soothing, and he lets go with one finger. A little while later, she says, "Let go." Slowly, slowly, this angel gets him to let go with 9 of his 10 fingers. Now he's holding on with only one finger for dear life. And the angel's voice says, "Let go." And he says, "Now I can't. Now you're asking too much. Now I'm really going to plummet to my death." But there's something about this voice of the angel. She convinces him, and he lets go. And he doesn't fall at all. And he's shocked. And he looks down and he realizes he's been standing on solid earth the whole time. And I love that parable because so many of us spend our lives holding on for dear life. We have this death grip on life. This death grip on what we think we need, how we think we need it, who we think we are. And that somehow if I let go, I'm going to plummet into the deadly nothingness, the deadly void. But when we finally leap, we realize, oh wait, I've been held the whole time. I'm not hanging on for dear life here. There's actually this incredible energy of the universe that's holding me and supporting me, a wisdom of the universe that flows through me, that knows who I am, that knows what I'm supposed to be doing. Doesn't need me to hold on for dear life. So you let go of that death grip.